go. Let's do it.
Great. Great. All right. So to start with, we got a couple of questions on, please briefly review the steps again in getting the 360 feedback with the coworkers. And then also, what's the best way of sharing that 360 feedback with a leader? Any tips or best practices? So Frank, why don't you start with that one? And hi, Ruth.
Hi, my apologies for being late. I had trouble signing on.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, well, in terms of the 360s, I will assume that is doing the behavioral interviewing 360s. That it's funny. In next couple of weeks, I'm going to be emceeing the NICO conference for coaches, and two of the speakers. One will be I'm forgetting her first name. I'll say Sarah Brickman. Berkman, who took over the business from her father, and also Bob Anderson from the Leadership Circle. So, there's tons of just great 360 tools available and all of them apply to, our coaching. They just become the raw material of which a leader chooses their goal. In terms of the behavioral interviewing, I stick with pretty much just the classic 3 questions. Whoa. I just echoed.
That sounds like a Star Wars movie. Oh boy.
Well, you're starting to echo now too. I don't know why. Joanne, do you have a clue? Is everybody on mute?
No, and that's what I recommend you do.
All right.
Hit mute all.
All right, let me see how to do this. I hit mute all. Everyone's muted. And am I still echoing?
No, it's good now. So you want to, leave yourself and Frank off of mute.
Yeah, I took myself off.
All right. Okay, so I'm off mute. Joanne's off mute. Okay, cool.
Unless you all prefer the echo, we can just put it back on. But if not, let's kind of leave it the way it is. As I was saying, in terms of the way I do the interview 360 is I just keep it simple with the original 3 questions that we ask. And again, the way I phrase them, and remember, all of this that I'm describing is a way. Nothing that I would describe as the way. So, you customize it based upon how you want to coach, and or how the leader wants to be coached. So I've yet to have a leader give me the questions they want to ask when I do the behavioral interviewing, but I guess it could come up. The questions I ask are, starting off with the positives, to have people list the 3, what they consider to be the 3 greatest strengths this person has as a leader. And I do tell them, you can think ahead because they get these questions ahead of time. You can think ahead, yet prioritize. I'm going to stop writing and copying notes after 3. So in other words, you can't give me 4 or 5, pick the top 3. Then after collecting that data, I ask them for, this is the way I phrase it, the 3 most useful areas for this person to improve as a leader. I don't describe them as weaknesses. I describe them as useful areas to improve as a leader. And now I would say usually the results I get would be things people consider to be weaknesses, but that's just the way I phrase it. Then I collect that data. And again, all this data will be themed by groups and by responses. Then finally, the third question is actually almost the first 2 questions are a setup for this final question. And that is, I usually predicate it with, when I'm talking to the person, I've got this magic wand. That's the good news. Bad news, I can only use it once. And I'm going to tap this person on their shoulder. And when I tap them on their shoulder, they're going to instantly change. Now, here's how they're going to instantly change. They're going to change in one behavior. And that behavior can be something they start doing that they haven't done much of. It's something they stop doing that you prefer they never do this again. It could be doing more of or less of something. What would that one behavior be you would want me to use when I use my magic wand? And again, they just give me one thing and I type it down. So that's the data collection phase of the 360.
Okay. And then what about sharing that 360 feedback with the leader? Any tips or recommendations?
Well, I'll go back to, in fact, I just had a conversation the other day with a client around this, um, and their methodology is they don't share 360 data until they sit down with a person face to face. And that's the way we used to do it in the early 1980s. I mean, when Marshall and I were partners and we were doing training, we weren't doing coaching, yet our training was pioneering because before the training, anyone coming had a 360 done on them around the model that we were teaching in the program. At the program, they would get their data and we would have a one-on-one with them to review the data, determine what they learned from it, pick a goal, and write an action plan. That was what we did in the early 80s. We also, they would not see the report until they sat down with us. I realized how much time I was wasting. So since then, what I do is send out the report in advance. Now, I think there's one thing that I do is there's a time frame of saying that I do not like to send it out a week before I'm going to talk to the person. So I already have scheduled when I'm going to talk to that person. And I usually give them, say, a weekend, a couple of days to soak on it before we talk. So they actually get the 360 ahead of time. Also with the instructions of do not talk to anyone at work about this until we've talked. Right? I can say you can talk about it, you can show it to your spouse if you want, you can show it to your kids if you want, don't show it to anybody at work when they're done. So they have a chance to look at the data. And then the first question I ask someone once we actually start talking about it, and I tell you, most of the time I do this, it's a phone. It's not a Zoom meeting even. I'll probably start using Zoom, but it's just a phone call. I'm talking to the person. I'm not doing this face to face. My first question is, before we go any further, is there anything you didn't understand in your report? And by the way, don't think that doesn't get a lot of people saying yes, because they get confused because they'll see a correlation between two scores. One, they scored higher than the other. And they're kind of wondering, well, why did I score good here and not good there?
So Frank, let me jump in, buddy.
Sure.
So is what you say then is that when you do the debrief of the 360, you start with, tell me, are there any parts of the report that you don't understand? That's where you begin? Okay.
Yes. And it is because people are making correlations in their head and they're confused. They're either confused like, why is this score high when this one's low? Or why is this one low because this one's high? They're just making connections with all the data.
Okay.
And see, I like to deal with that first because I'm really getting down to, you're drilling down to what did you learn from this? And out of this, among everything else you're thinking about, where are you tending to lean towards of where you want to work to improve as a leader? And I also advise people, again, this is just a tip I use, is don't just get tunnel vision in this report. The report is a snapshot view of various people at this point in time. It may be very consistent with every other views you have of yourself or others may have, but just consider it to be one data point.
Okay.
Now, again, I'd say that. I think most people end up very tunnel vision into the report, and that's what they're using to pick.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Chester, I see you there, and I'm just wondering if there's anything that you wanted to add to what we're talking about. And you're on mute. Oh, now you're off mute.
Yeah, and I unmuted. No, I love the incubation period. I think that's really important, that you get the data and you just think about it. And then as you and I talked through it, it cleared up a lot of issues for me. So I enjoyed that process very much, in not having to respond immediately, but having the information and then talking it through with the coach to arrive at the areas that we wanted to work on. I thought it was really interesting to see the feedback, the positive, where you want to work, and actionable items. It was very compact and succinct for me. I enjoyed the process very much.
Good. So for you folks, I've been working with Chester now. What's interesting with Chester, not only is he a certified coach, but he's going through the process as a leader of his organization. And I've been working with him now for a couple of months. And we just finished up the 360. We had a 360 stakeholder kickoff meeting. So you've got a really good idea of how the process works because you've experienced it firsthand. And thank you for sharing. You've been fun to work with.